Hello guys, welcome back to uComputing Systems YouTube channel. My name is Eugene, and today I'm going to show you how you can install and configure your DHCP server on Windows Server 2012. The Windows Server 2012 edition we are using is the Data Center edition, and we are going to run it on VMware Workstation. So as you can see, I have my Windows Server 2012 over here on my VMware Workstation. So I'm going to power it up, and then we see what we can do to install and configure our DHCP server. So when you log on to your server operating system, your Windows Server operating system for the first time, and it has no network service on it, what you need to do is to make sure you check the computer name and change it to suit the purpose of the server. Right now, this our server operating system is going to serve as our DHCP server. So we are going to bring our default desktop icons and change the computer name to DHCP SRV1. And then afterwards, the next thing that you need to do is to set your IP address for your server. Servers must always use static IP addresses. So we're going to have a look at how we can do that. But before that, let's bring our default desktop icons. I'll click on Start here and then type Icons. And then click on Settings. And then I'll click on Show or Hide Common Icons on the desktop. And it gives me the chance to bring my default desktop icons. I'll just bring my default desktop icons. I'll need them. And then what I'm going to do next is to set my IP address and then change my computer name. So I'm going to use Class C TCP/IP version 4 private IP. So I'll open my network and sharing center and click on Change Adapter Settings. And over here, I'll right click and go to Properties of my network interface card, and then I'll disable TCP/IP version 6 for now, and then select my TCP/IP version 4 option here and go to Properties. I'll set my IP address here by switching this radio button to use the following IP address, and I'll enter my address here. I'm going to use 192.168.0.2. okay, you're not going to set any default gateway for now, no preferred DNS. I'll go OK here, and then I'll go close. And then the next thing that we need to do here is to change our computer name. So I'm going to change my computer name by right clicking on Computer here and going to Properties, and then I'll click on Change Settings here, and then click on Change here, and I'll change my computer name to DHCP SRV1, DHCP server 1. Okay, you can change it to whatever you want, but the initial one doesn't look good. So I'll click on OK over here, and this will cause my system to restart. I'll click OK here, click Close, and then restart by clicking on Restart here, and then we're going to wait for it to restart. Once the system is done rebooting, I would sign in by pressing Ctrl-Alt-Insert on VMware. If you're using VMware and you see Ctrl-Alt-Delete, you press Ctrl-Alt-Insert. But on a physical machine, you have to press Ctrl-Alt-Delete. Okay, so I'll press Ctrl-Alt-Insert here and then type my password and go enter here. Anytime you boot into your server operating system, your Windows Server operating system, you have some tools that runs at startup, and one of them is the Server Manager. So you're going to see your Server Manager pop up right here, right now. Okay, if you don't want it to run at startup, you can disable it, and I'm going to show you how. Okay, once our Server Manager is opened, we can just disable it from running at startup if you want by using this option here. You click on Manage here, And then when you click on manage here and you click on server manager properties, you get a chance to stop it from running as startup so that it doesn't delay you anymore. So I'll check this box and go OK. We can launch it again anytime you want. You can re-enable it to run as startup if you want. Okay, so there's one more thing that I want to do here. When you click on local server over here, you will see that I am in Ghana right now, but my time zone is wrong. So I'm going to change my time zone by clicking on this option here, and I'll change my time zone to use the one that matches my time in Ghana. I'll click OK here, and this is OK. I'll click OK here, and everything looks good. After all this is done, what you can do is that you can go to the dashboard again over here, and you add your DHCP server role. Okay, so I'll click on add roles here, and then a wizard will pop up. I'll click on next here. I'll make sure the radio button here is at role-based or feature-based installation. I'll go next, and I'll select my server, which is my DHCP SRv1, and go next here. And then what we are going to install here is our DHCP server. I'll check DHCP server, and it tells me to add its administrative tools. I'll click add here and go next. And then I'll ignore these features. I'll ignore these features over here. I wouldn't install anything. I won't install anything here. I'll just go next, and then go next, and then click install. Okay, so once the installation is complete, you're going to click on close here, and then we can close the server manager console. And then the next thing we're going to do is to launch our DHCP console. Okay, once the DHCP console is opened, we can go ahead and start configuring it. Okay, so we are configuring DHCP version 4 for TCP/IP version 4. Then after that, we come and configure DHCP version 6 for TCP/IP version 6. To configure DHCP version 4, we need to create a new scope. I'll just right click on this IPv4 option here and select new scope. And then I'll go next here, and I'll give it a name, scope 1. And I'll go next here and enter 192.168.0.1. This IP range has to be having the same network ID as our host machine's IP address, our server's IP address. Okay, so I'll enter a range. I'll just need about 19 to 18 IP addresses, so I'll just enter 192.168.0.20 here, and leave the default subnet mask. Go next, and then I'll create an exclusion range. I'm not going to assign the first IP to any machine because I've already assigned it to my DHCP server. So I'll type 192.168.0.1 and click add here, and I'll go next, and then I'll leave the default lease duration period at 8 days and go next here. And then I don't have any scope options I want to configure. I don't have any router, DNS, WAN server available, so I'll click no here and go next and go finish. Once this is done, I would activate the scope by right clicking on it here and selecting activate, and then my DHCP server will now be ready to lease out IP addresses. Okay, so let's test this. And then this server over here too is connected to virtual switch 2. Okay, so things looks good over here. I'll click on this client machine and resume it. Okay, once this machine complete resuming, it's going to send a DHCP discover packet to all the nodes on the network. And when this DHCP server finds that discover packet, it's going to reply with an offer packet, and then this client is going to send a DHCP request packet, and then the DHCP server is going to send an acknowledgement packet back to this client that contains the host configurations, which is the IP address and other addresses that are associated with this machine's network adapter. Okay, so let's check whether the client machine here has been able to send those discover packets, and we have an IP address list to this machine. I'll open Network and Sharing Center and then go to Adapter Settings. I'll right click on this network interface card and then go to Status and go to Details. It tells me that it has obtained 192.168.0 from our DHCP server. Things looks good over here. So let's check whether this is not a static IP. I'll go to the properties of this adapter, and then I'll select TCP/IP version 4, go to properties, and it shows that this is an automatically obtained IP address. So everything looks good. When we go to our DHCP server again, at where we have address leases, when we refresh, it tells us that TCP/IP version 4 class C IP address has been sent successfully to this machine. Okay, so everything is fine here. The reason why we have this bad address over here, I think, was that we have a problem with our address pool here. This machine's IP, the server's IP, I made a mistake here. When you open the command prompt and you run ipconfig, it tells me the IP address of this server is 192.168.0.2. So that was what I was supposed to exclude here, so that this DHCP server does not assign it to any machine. So the DHCP server tried to assign from .2, and it realized that this will cause a conflict. That is why we have this bad address over here. So we are going to correct this by just deleting this exclusion range and then creating a new one. I'll right click and select new exclusion range, and I'll type 192.168.0.2 so that it wouldn't assign .2 to any machine. I'll click add, and I'll also add 192.168.0.1 because later on we are going to configure something that we call a DHCP relay agent, and our relay agent is going to be using this IP address. Okay, so I'm going to click add here so that it doesn't assign these two IP addresses to any machine. So everything works fine here. We can test by pinging through from this machine here to this side. So I'm going to disable the firewall. You can also configure the firewall to allow the ICMP version 4 traffic, but for the sake of time, we are just going to disable the firewall and test. Okay, so I'll click on Windows Firewall here and then click on turn on or off, and I'll turn this one off. I'll click OK and close, and then on our client machine, I'll just go to the command prompt and type ping 192.168.0.2, and it's giving us reply. Things looks good over here. Alright, so that is that for configuring DHCP version 4. We're going to move on to configuring DHCP version 6. And to do that, we need to make sure our DHCP server over here has a static TCP/IP version 6 address. So I'm going to pass through the same process. I'm going to open my network connections console by running ncpa.cpl This is also another way that you can access your network connections console. Alright, click on this network adapter and go to properties, and then I'll enable TCP/IP version 6 again and go to its properties. I'll select and go to its properties, and then I'll assign a TCP/IP version 6 site local address. Okay, TCP/IP version 6 site local addresses are similar to the private TCP/IP version 4 addresses that we had in TCP/IP version 4. Okay, they are sometimes called site local addresses, sometimes they call it unique local addresses, and these are all unicast address types. So I would type a site local or a unique local address here by typing fd:/c:/c:/c:/1, and I'll put 64 here to indicate that 64 bits of the address space represent the network ID. Okay, so I'll click OK over here. You can check this box over here to validate the address if you are not sure about the TCP/IP version 6 address that you've set. I'll click OK here. It gives me no error, meaning that the address is valid, and I'll click close over here. Close this one, and then I'll open my DHCP console and configure my TCP/IP version 6 DHCP server. I'll open the DHCP console and then configure my DHCP version 6. I'll expand this DHCP SRv1, and we're done with this. We're not going to touch on this guy anymore. Okay, so we are going to configure DHCP version 6. We are just going to right click. You just have to right click IPv6 here, then you select new scope. You go next and you give it a name, scope 1 here, and I'll go next here and give it a prefix. The prefix will be the network ID for the address I want to give, the address range I want to give. So I'll put fd:/c:/c:/c:/, and then go next here and then exclude the TCP/IP version 6 address I have assigned to this server, which is fd:/c:/c:/1. Okay, so that it doesn't assign this address to any machine over the network. So I'll click add here, and then it's over here. Looks good. fd:/c:/c:/1, and I'll go next here and then leave this default over here and go next, and then I'll activate the scope by leaving the radio button here. I'll click finish, and everything looks good. And then we are going to test from the other end, from our client machine. I'll open Network and Sharing Center and then click on Change Adapter Settings. I'm going to disable this Bluetooth adapter for now, and then go to the properties of this one. I'm going to check whether the TCP/IP version 6 scope we have on our DHCP server is leasing out IP addresses to this TCP/IP version 6 client over here. First of all, let me check whether the TCP/IP version 6 is enabled. I'll go to the properties of the adapter, and then it shows that it's enabled. Here I'll go to status. I'll go to the status of this adapter, and then just click on details, and it tells me it's still having a link local address. Okay, so what we're going to do here is to try and let this client obtain an IP address from this DHCP server. I'm going to open my command prompt and then run this command: ipconfig /release, enter, and then I'll run ipconfig /renew, enter. Okay, and it's still giving me a link local. This is one thing that you can also do to troubleshoot this problem. I'm just going to open Network and Sharing Center again, and then click on Change Adapter Settings, and then I'll go to the properties of this network adapter, and I'll stop the TCP/IP version 4 so that the TCP/IP version 6 can operate very well. I'll go OK here, and then we can go ahead and disable this adapter and then re-enable it, and then check again. I'll go to the status, go to details. Okay, it's coming now. All right, it shows over here it has obtained a TCP/IP version 6 address from our DHCP version 6 server, and it's using the same network ID as our server over here. Let's check something over here. When I click refresh, it shows that Windows 8 PC has obtained this address from our DHCP server, so everything is looking good. All right, so that is that for configuring DHCP version 4 and DHCP version 6. Thank you very much for watching. See you some other time. Bye bye.